What happened in Jordan in April 2021 was not merely a family dispute within the Hashemite household, but rather a defining moment that shook the foundations of the state and raised unprecedented questions about the true centers of power and the underlying tension between the throne and the tribes. At the heart of this political storm emerged the name Yasser Al Majali, a man who was neither a minister nor a military commander, but rather the chief of staff to one of the most controversial figures in the royal palace, Prince Hamza bin al-Hussein. But who is Yasser Al Majali, and why did he suddenly become a symbol of a conspiracy, allegedly woven in closed rooms and carried out behind palace doors? Was he merely a victim of his closeness to a disgraced prince, or was he the organizational mind behind a subtle movement relying more on tribal influence than on the power of the army? In this video, we will reconstruct the crisis moment by moment, starting from the government's ambiguous statements, passing through the arrests of prominent figures led by Al Majali, and ending with the conflicting narratives between loyalty to the homeland and insult to the tribes. So, stay with us until the end, and don't forget to support us by liking the video and subscribing to the channel to receive all our new content. At dawn on April 3, 2021, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan was shaken by an unprecedented political event when Prince Hamza bin al-Hussein, the half-brother of King Abdullah II, was placed under house arrest as part of what was described as an attempted coup to overthrow the existing regime. The security operation announced by the authorities included the arrest of 19 individuals described as having direct or indirect connections with the prince. Among them stood out Yasser Al Majali, the prince's chief of staff, and a former officer with wide tribal influence, as well as Bassem Awadallah, a prominent economic figure and royal court insider, and Sharif Hassan bin Zayed, a former royal family member known for his controversial regional ties. Other influential tribal figures such as Samir Al Majali and Adnan Abu Hamad were also detained, giving the incident a socially sensitive dimension in a country whose stability rests on delicate tribal balances. Local and international media treated the event as the most serious political crisis to shake the Hashemite palace in decades. The case quickly turned into an open file filled with complex questions touching upon the dynamics within the royal family, the balance of power between the state and the tribes, and the rising political role of figures surrounding the prince. Foremost among them, Yasser Al Majali, whose name became a key to understanding the intricate layers of the crisis. Yasser Suleiman Al Majali is a retired colonel in the Jordanian army and a member of the Majali tribe, one of the most prominent and politically influential tribes in Jordan. He was not just a former officer, he also held a significant position within the royal circle as chief of staff to Prince Hamza bin al-Hussein, the former crown prince. This position brought him into direct contact with sensitive palace affairs and made him a key figure within what was known as the prince's inner trust circle. Al Majali enjoyed deep-rooted connections within tribal communities and was often regarded as an unofficial channel of communication between the prince and the tribes, particularly amid what was described as an erosion of the relationship between the state and traditional social components. Because of this role, he became part of a network of political and social influence that, according to media reports, helped shape a discourse parallel to that of the state. Although Al Majali was not a public decision-maker, he was an integral part of the organizational structure surrounding Prince Hamza, a network that played a central role in creating the public impression that there existed an alternative current within the ruling system. This perception made Al Majali a pivotal figure in the ensuing crisis, and his name appeared in nearly every analysis of the alleged incitement or coup attempt, depending on the official narrative. Given the nature of his position, Al Majali's presence in the events of April 2021 was no coincidence, but rather a natural outcome of his administrative, tribal, and symbolic role as the liaison between the prince and his social base, making him an inevitable target for arrest and interrogation during any political escalation. On the evening of April 3, 2021, the area of Ghor al-Mazrah, near the Dead Sea, witnessed one of the most controversial security operations in Jordan's modern history. A heavily armed security force raided the home of Yasser Al Majali, chief of staff to Prince Hamza bin al-Hussein, as part of what was later described as the foiling of an attempted coup. According to accounts from the family, a black SUV entered the courtyard of the house without warning, and several armed men in full military uniform advanced toward the family members, pointing their weapons directly at them, including women and children. His brother, Yasser Al Majali, described the scene as unprecedented in its harshness and show of force. Meanwhile, Basma Al Majali, his niece, posted a tweet on Twitter saying, "Weapons were pointed at everyone in the house, even the women and children. We weren't given a chance to explain or even ask why the raid did not stop at the arrest of Yasser Al Majali alone." Several other members of the same family were also detained. His place of detention remained officially undisclosed, opening the door to a wave of questions and doubts about the motives behind the operation and its legal legitimacy. The Majali tribe responded swiftly, issuing an official statement describing what happened as a black day in the history of the relationship between the state and the tribes. The statement considered the manner in which Yasser Al Majali was arrested a betrayal of the principles upon which the modern Jordanian state was founded. Foremost among them, the principle of mutual respect between the regime and its tribal components. Prominent tribal figures demanded an independent and public investigation, or the immediate release of the detainees, asserting that the case lacked a legal basis and was built on political assessments rather than clear judicial evidence. Amid the turmoil that engulfed the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan in April 2021, the name Yasser Al Majali topped the list of those accused of involvement in what the authorities described as a plot to destabilize the security and stability of the state. According to official statements issued by the Jordanian government, the alleged conspiracy had reached advanced stages of coordination and involved systematic efforts to incite public opinion and recruit individuals from certain tribes with the aim of creating internal divisions within the social and political structure of the country. The government claimed that Yasser Al Majali played a central role as the prince's closest organizational aide, responsible for managing tribal and social gatherings. However, according to official and semi-official reports, these gatherings were not mere social events. They allegedly served as political fronts to promote dissenting views and deepen political polarization. Some security sources further asserted that Al Majali used his position as an intermediary between the prince and tribal leaders to foster a narrative undermining trust in state institutions, not through direct force, but through what was described as a soft, yet highly dangerous method from the state's perspective. Although no tangible evidence was presented publicly, the continued detention of Al Majali for several days and the repeated mention of his name in the government's narrative made him one of the most prominent figures in the Jordan coup attempt case, especially given his silence and absence from both media and legal appearances during that period. Amid the political and security escalation that shook the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan in April 2021, Prince Hassan bin Talal, the uncle of King Abdullah II, emerged as a pivotal figure in a delicate containment effort. As the most senior Hashemite in terms of symbolic stature and political legacy, Prince Hassan was tasked with mediating within the royal family in an attempt to resolve what had become known as the Prince Hamza coup attempt. Prince Hassan met directly with Prince Hamza bin al-Hussein, who was then under house arrest following accusations that he had led a movement perceived as threatening to the monarchy. The family meeting marked a major turning point in the course of the crisis, resulting in a statement attributed to Prince Hamza in which he affirmed his full loyalty to King Abdullah II and his respect for the constitution and state institutions. Despite this apparent de-escalation, the security measures against individuals linked to Prince Hamza, foremost among them Yasser Al Majali, his chief of staff, remained in place. Al Majali continued to be held in custody, and the authorities did not announce any specific charges or refer the case to court at that time. This fueled public debate and tribal discontent about the effectiveness of the mediation and its actual ability to end the crisis. Prince Hassan's mediation reflected a traditional tool of conflict resolution within the Hashemite system, one that relies on family wisdom to avoid escalation. However, it also highlighted the absence of a transparent legal process and deepened questions about why figures like Al Majali remained detained despite Prince Hamza's public pledge of loyalty. As the coup attempt case exploded in public, the media landscape split between official domestic coverage focusing on state security and international reporting that shed light on divisions within the Hashemite family and the mystery surrounding the detainees, particularly Yasser Al Majali. Major global newspapers such as The Washington Post and The Guardian described the incident as a failed coup and a rare internal rift within Jordan's royal establishment, giving the crisis a wider international dimension. These reports linked the arrests to an attempt to recalibrate the balance of power within the monarchy and emphasized the enigmatic role played by Prince Hamza's chief of staff, Yasser Al Majali, in these developments. By contrast, official Jordanian media adhered strictly to the state's narrative, framing the events as activities threatening national security and stability, without delving into details of the investigations or providing direct evidence to support specific charges. This lack of clarity prompted large segments of the public to question the transparency and credibility of the proceedings. The tribal stance, however, was far more explicit and assertive. The Majali tribe denounced what it called the deliberate targeting of tribal figures, viewing the arrests, particularly that of Yasser Al Majali, as an affront to tribal and societal dignity, rather than merely a security measure against certain individuals. Notably, the New York Times reported that Yasser Al Majali remained in detention for more than 2 weeks without formal charges, a fact cited in broader international criticism of the lack of clear legal grounds for the actions taken. This, in turn, raised further questions about the balance between national security and procedural justice in the handling of the case. In the days following the arrest of Yasser Al Majali and several tribal figures, the situation entered an increasingly opaque and uncertain phase, marked by a lack of transparency and a flood of unanswered questions. A legal defense committee was formed to represent Al Majali along with others, such as Samir Al Majali. According to legal sources, the investigations involved between 14 and 16 detainees, yet no clear or detailed indictment was officially announced by the authorities. Notably, the statements made by the defense lawyers rejected any incitement aspect in their clients' activities, emphasizing that all the monitored meetings and movements were traditional social interactions that could in no way be considered conspiratorial or threatening to state security. Human rights and tribal circles viewed the continued detention without formal charges or a public trial as a violation of justice principles, while Jordanian public opinion remained divided between those who saw the case as a legitimate move to protect national stability and those who viewed it as a preemptive campaign aimed at silencing influential tribal voices. Among the most prominent allegations circulated was that Yasser Al Majali had played an active logistical role in coordinating tribal movements across Jordan in support of a supposed plan to restructure the balance of power within the Hashemite family. These claims relied on his sensitive position as Prince Hamza's chief of staff and his broad social connections with influential figures. However, the absence of conclusive evidence kept this theory confined to the realm of speculation rather than established fact. Rumors soon expanded beyond Jordan's borders, with reports later alleging that Al Majali had been in informal contact with regional actors, particularly in Saudi Arabia. Although such claims were echoed by some regional media outlets, they lacked documentary or recorded proof, rendering them closer to political conjecture than verified criminal accusations. Conversely, several local and international analyses argued that Al Majali's role had been deliberately exaggerated, portraying him as merely an administrative aide close to Prince Hamza, who was overburdened with blame to reinforce the narrative of a grand conspiracy. This perspective raised further questions about the political motivations behind the media amplification of his image. The manner of Al Majali's arrest also intensified public debate. Eyewitnesses described it as a show of excessive force, with weapons pointed at his family members, including women and children, an act that his tribe deemed an insult beyond security considerations, carrying an implicit political message directed at Jordan's major tribal groups, particularly the Majali clan. This reinforced the belief that the affair was not purely legal or security-related, but rather had a political dimension aimed at curbing the influence of certain tribal figures within Jordan's social hierarchy. Despite the passage of considerable time since his detention, the authorities never announced specific charges against Yasser Al Majali, nor was he granted a public trial, and no documents surfaced proving his direct involvement. The absence of transparent legal proceedings led many to regard him as a victim of political sidelining rather than genuine culpability, leaving his fate suspended, neither acquitted nor convicted, to this very day. In the end, Yasser Al Majali was not merely the chief of staff to Prince Hamza. He represented a highly sensitive social and tribal link, where political considerations intertwined with symbolic dimensions within the structure of the Jordanian state. For that reason, his arrest was not perceived as an isolated measure, but rather as a broader message, directed at anyone who might contemplate stepping outside the official framework, whether from within the system or beyond it. And with that, we reach the end of today's video. Don't miss the chance to stay updated. Subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming content.